right, welcome drawing tours. Today I am going to talk a little bit about gesture, introduce your first assignment. This is our first video where I'm going to do some a little bit more like slide lecturing and some demo, and I apologize if it sounds a little bit like I'm speaking to you from the space shuttle. The room that I'm in right now has really easy to use document camera and such. I can like switch back and forth, but the audio doesn't seem great. So this may not be a continued way of having this set up. I'm trying to use the Denton campus, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem great, but hopefully you can get everything you need out of today's discussion. So let me just go ahead and jump in by first off, let me go ahead and show you where to find slides. I know that may seem a little redundant, but yeah, here, sorry, I don't know why it's taking forever. There we go. Okay, first off, to find slides, I just want you to know you can go to our home page in Drawing 2, and then you can go to Pages, and you will see now a published page that says Unit Slides, Videos, etc. And you will see for each unit, I will slowly be uploading all of the slides and things that I go over. I'm building this class for the first time to be an online one, so some of my slides are changing, so I can't really post super far ahead. I also prefer that you guys don't work ahead, which I've already mentioned before, so it's probably like better to just go ahead and do it a little bit at a time. You can also find them in files, but then you have to like guess my file names and all that kind of stuff. Also, you'll notice we have some assignments appearing under assignments. You can't see this. I haven't published it yet because of this video too and all that stuff. But yeah, we're going to start seeing our assignments, which you can see in the assignments tab or at the home page. You'll also see grade weights and things like that starting to appear. Now, let's go ahead. That's all I want to show you for Canvas. And then I really prefer when I'm going to show you slides, I like to use the, oh, and I'm showing you a dog. Spoiler alert. Sorry, I should have had this more ready. When I show you slides, I really like to go ahead and show you on PowerPoint. It just seems much smoother. Okay, so what we're going over today, gesture drawing. I am going to talk really fast because I don't know if I have a ton of time on these videos to do super full explanation and stuff. But in any case, gesture drawing, it is not the same as hand gestures. If you've already taken Drawing 1, which you should all have to be in this class, you should already be somewhat acquainted with gestures. If you aren't, it'll be all right. I'm walking you through this almost like you are learning it again because I want you to learn the way that I teach it. And those of you who are in my class in Drawing 1, it's not going to hurt you to get these reminders and stuff too and kind of revisit gestures. Now, again, they're not the same as hand gestures. There are kind of two purposes that I always was sort of taught for gestures. One is to learn the expressive nature of your way of mark making and get like practice and warm up and all that kind of stuff, but still not even really warm. It's really just about your way of making quick and wistful expressive marks. It helps you learn kind of different styles and how to make different marks and how to use line and mass and do different kind of expressive things. The other use is a little bit more practical, and truth be told, I was really only taught this first use of going quick and wistful and being expressive, and I always thought what was the point of gestures? Just to be like messy and crazy and expressive? Like I didn't really get why we did them if that was the only point. But the other, what I'll kind of introduce in a minute as the more practical use for gestures always made it feel more worthwhile to me. So first, let me go over the expressive nature of gestures. So, and here's a definition. Gesture drawing is drawing done using quick and wistful lines to represent an object or to capture movement and an expressive mood. Also, pose. Capturing that object, getting the pose is really important. Okay, and as I said, one of the first ways you're usually taught to do this is to be expressive and be quick, because it's good to loosen up and be able to draw quick. It's not like gesture drawing is meant to be these like long form finished drawings that you like everybody needs to be able to draw in 5 minutes, all that kind of stuff. No, it's not really like that. It's more like an exercise in being quick and being expressive. It's not to say that you always have to draw fast. You just draw gestures fast. In any case, here are some different ways of making marks that kind of make sense. Like I said, doing these helps you learn how you make marks. Are you too tight? Are you too loose? Do you need more control? What do you need? And how does your mark come across? So here we see three different hands kind of drawn in different forms of gestures, all pretty quick. The first one you see here on the left is very bouncy, very curvilinear, very circular, and that adds a sort of softness to it. And there's a lot of implied lines, meaning unfinished lines, if that's not a vocab word I have in the slides. Well, it is later actually, so that's good. But yeah, implied shapes, implied lines here, very curvy, very soft and bouncy, versus the middle picture you're seeing, very jagged, very aggressive, lots of marks, making really kind of intense dark lines. And the more lines you have, the darker it gets. That's something we'll talk about too, is the building up of values being lights and shadows. And in gestures, you build up values by making a lot of marks, and it adds to that expressiveness when we're talking. Then here on the left, or on the right, sorry, you will see a more just like a sketchy version of a slightly open hand. This one is about moving quickly, getting the fullness of the shape. You notice that it does have a little bit of form because the lines follow the shape of the hand, meaning, and form, for a review there too, is 3D-ness in the hand, basically. 3D-ness is a TM word I just didn't know. Three-dimensionality, sense of taking up space. And you get that here because the directions of the lines, the amount of lines, it's not just some big bold line around the outside of the hand. You really get the sense that it has fullness, even though it's not a fully finished, like, long drawing. It's a sketch. That's another way to kind of think of gestures as like sketchy, but it's not messy, it's controlled. There's a purpose to it. Again, the expressiveness, and then the other purpose I'm going to talk about. In any case, another purpose for gestures in terms of the expressiveness is getting the idea that there's movement involved, getting the pose so that the person has weight downward or movement this way. If they're dancing to the left, they move to the left. If they're jumping, they have a little bit of a sense of upward motion. All that kind of stuff can be important. Sometimes people do that by literally sketching gestures right on top of each other to get that sense of like layered movement through a pose. Other times you get this through just like kind of lyrical extra marks. And again, the way that you do the marks are the lines up the arm, like these really, the extending arm is these long, like flowing lines, versus the tightened arm is more, maybe the spinning arm has like a more curviness. So I don't know, you get this sense of movement through the way you make your marks. And notice here in the one on the right, again, a different concentration of marks around, there's this like section of tension right here, and expressiveness that comes from a lot of marks being made there. And that adds weight. It adds a sense of shape, fullness, form, as well as the idea that they're like standing there. Then the custodian is debating coming in here, I think. Then the head, which is moving more lightly and moving upward, has a lightness to it. It is not heavy and lots of marks. Okay, just to make sure I note it, remember that you can do gestures of non-humans. We really tend to focus on humans a lot for gestures, and we will in these slides and activities for the first part for sure. But you can draw non-human things. You still get the pose, you still get the movement, the expressiveness, all that stuff. You'll notice here that this drawing has a little bit of that bubble drawing sort of like format that many of you have probably seen before. But I want to note that if you've done that before, that's a great baseline for understanding gestures. The problem I have with a lot of people moving into the bubble drawing type of thing is that a lot of people use that to draw from their head, and gestures are not from your head. Never. You are always going to be drawing from looking at something. Let me repeat that, and it's in the slide. You have to draw a gesture by looking at something in the real world, okay? These bubble letters, if you have a habit of drawing those and doing cartoons and things from your head, you're going to tend to generalize. You're going to make things like a generic shape instead of the actual shape that you're seeing. So you have to be careful with the bubble letters, or the bubble shapes, bubble forms and stuff like that, or box forms. Like, you can do that, but it needs to correspond to the shape you're looking at, not a shape in your head or the general shape of a dog or anything like that. Okay, hope that makes sense. Another thing to note is you can do non-animate objects. You can do things that don't have movement in them. You can create a sense of movement, a sense of pose, and a sense of expressiveness. And you can see that here, this very kind of scribbly line drawing of these objects here. The ones further back have fewer lines, so that gives them a sense of being further away. The heavier objects have more lines, and they have more shadows created by the amount of lines. Gives a sense of, it's almost like vibrating. Talking about this one here on the left, or on the right, sorry. The one on the left, I do want to talk about Yeah, again, I was talking about that one on the right, the scribbly one. The one on the left, it's a little bit more layered. It gets chaotic in the middle because they were just drawing right on top of the other drawings they've been doing, and that's okay with gesture. Again, it adds to that expressiveness, adds values in areas where if there is a lot of information, there's more stuff to draw, there's probably more value, so it's okay to do that. But I really like to really ask, usually in class I ask, what is this object? And most of you will know just by looking, it's a bottle. It's a wine bottle. But at the end of the day, does it really look anything like a wine bottle? You know, does it look like a finished drawing? No, it doesn't. It has this sense of curving towards you because of the way the marks were made, and it has the area where it goes in skinny at the neck. But I will point out that the artist didn't even draw both sides. Your brain is smart enough to go ahead and fill in this right side just by creating corresponding kind of linear idea between those corresponding points. That is called an implied line, and then it creates an implied shape, which then adds to this implied form, right? It's all kind of loose, expressive. It's not necessarily always super finished and highly detailed. It's just giving you this pose, this gesture, okay? Now, that is all about expressiveness and fullness. And I've started to talk about how you create form and values and more practical things with gesture. But I also, on the more practical side, what I think, yeah, it's about developing movement and flow of the figure and creating the essence, creating proportion, intentional pose, being like it helps you develop hand-eye coordination. It is a useful warm-up before drawing. A lot of times it is just good practice. You know, I'm not going to say again that just a quick gesture is going to be like a full finished drawing, but it's always going to be good practice, and you're going to improve quickly. Although loose, it is very important that you establish the size of the figure. Explore the page. That's another thing. Gestures are really going to help you fill up a page, especially if you really listen to how I say to do it. Fill the page, get the pose, get the proportions, get it all put in place very quickly, and get that pose accurate. These are the practical things. It just helps you understand proportion, weight, and pose so much. I can't really reiterate that enough. Consider the proportion of the figure. It also helps you get contrapposto, which is it's basically the idea of the axes points of the body, the hips, the shoulders, and mainly the spine. Okay, and understanding that these axes points, you know, we don't all walk like Egyptians and stand super at attention all the time. We have a naturalness to our stance. And that idea in drawing humans, that natural stance, that more natural pose, is called contrapposto. I'll talk about it more in a second, but it creates movement through the posture, grounds the figure, all that stuff. And I do want to point out that gestures, once again, they are always drawn from life, ideally in person. You know, in a serious like UNT classes that I've taught before and stuff, and my undergraduate class at Hardin-Simmons University, you draw by looking at a person standing in the room with you. Now, if you can't do that, you can at least draw from a photo, but you never, ever, ever draw a gesture from your head. It just doesn't work. And if you do it for any of these assignments, I'm going to see it right away. I promise. It's really obvious to people who've been watching gestures be drawn through the years. Okay. Now, yeah, use at least a photo, but it's always from life. You're always looking at something. Okay. And in person, when I teach this class, you who've had me before know I always say, like, you're not looking. If you're not getting it, it's because you're just not looking. It's about seeing. It's about knowing what's in front of you and observing. Okay, now, just to reiterate, contrapposto is a system used in visual art to interpret movement and the distribution of weight. David is kind of the ultimate example of contrapposto. Now, the Greeks invented it. It was not something that was invented in the Renaissance, but it was brought back in the Renaissance and really made popular. Okay, now, this idea comes from it. What they were comparing is early Greek sculpture had that sort of walk like an Egyptian, like very static pose, right? Maybe they put 1 foot forward, but it's all very vertical and there's no sense of relaxation or movement. No, it was unreal. It was so posed. Now, what they started to figure out in Greek sculpture was that in real life, when we're just standing or even we're walking, we tend to put more emphasis on one side or the other. We put all our weight on one foot, and that tilts our hips. And then when we tilt our hips, it curves our spine, which then tilts our shoulders. Which we can turn independently from our hips, and then have our head turn independently from that. And all that idea of these different axes going different places, that's how you get the idea of contrapposto. Okay, and I just realized, I hope you guys can see my little picture above the scale, because I'm doing all these like weird poses and goofy stuff as we go. But in any case, yeah, original Greek sculpture is very stagnant. And then as we move on, we get more relaxed posture, points of tension in the muscles. That's how you add weight too. If you know there's a lot of weight on one leg, you can add more values, add more shadows, and that adds a sense of weight in that direction. Okay. Changes the center of gravity, all that good stuff. So basically, yeah, these are very quick gestures. These are the things I'm going to ask you to do right at the start, like 20 to 30 second gestures, just so you know when we get there. They're basically stick figures, like advanced stick figures with proper proportion, proper pose, and they're drawn from life. Stick figures are drawn from your head. These are not really stick figures, but they're just like slightly more developed. But yeah, you start in most gestures by drawing the spine. Then a lot of times when you draw the spine, it can continue. Sorry, I keep accidentally clicking. It can continue into the major leg, whatever the weight is on. You can sometimes continue through. You see several of these, the spine and one of the legs is kind of finished. And then you get the hips, you get the shoulders, you get the limbs. You remember that the thigh, ends at the knee, and then the calf goes a different direction, all that stuff. I will say, don't get super caught up on the heads in gestures for the most part. Quick circles, or I'll draw a quick little thing that I usually use for the head. And just don't super worry about those. It's kind of the last thing I do, because it's about full body. Unless you're doing a close-up of the face, that changes things. But in any case, do notice too, here we'll have an idea that I'm going to mention later for shortening. This figure, just in case you can't see my mouse, I'm talking about the left photo. Third figure in, you will notice they are turned sideways to us. So the shoulders don't have width. They are pointed towards us. Same for the hips. This is called foreshortening. And it's going to be important that you get that in poses as well. And starting with the contrapposto axes is going to help you do that. Now, besides getting the spine and the pose and the major axes and stuff like that, I also want you to think about, when you draw a gesture, you are going to very quickly, before you fill in any details, get all of the edges. We call it developing the envelope. I don't think you need to draw a full envelope around the whole shape as it's going to be. But what I want you to be able to do very quickly is, using the spine, axes, hips, whatever, you should know where the full top to bottom scale of your drawing within a few seconds, and then the left to right scale a few seconds after that, and within 20 to 30 seconds the entire space that your drawing is going to take up. Do not get focused on starting with the head and then moving to the shoulders and then go to the hips and then go to the legs. No, don't do that. Draw the whole thing. I used to play the song Jump Around in my classroom because I thought it was kind of a goofy way of reminding you guys to move around the page, move quickly. You don't have to draw the full shape around it again. The point is to get the full extent of the drawing quickly and not get fixated on one section. Now, that's the full thing. And then the next part of developing the envelope, or developing the fullness of the shape, don't get caught up on the wording, develop the envelope. Just think about, like, you're starting with the axes, contrapposto, then getting the fullness of the shape all in one quick go. These all fit into the first 20 or 30 seconds of your drawing. What you're going to do, from here, in order to start detailing and getting proportions more accurate, you're going to find angles that correspond. Your large forms will become more confident and accurate if you can compare the thigh to the calf, and then the thigh to the torso, and then the torso to the shoulders, and the arm, the upper arm to the shoulder. Right. Compare things. Where is the chin at in relation to the knee? Where's the hand at in relation to the foot? Different stuff like that, vertical and horizontal, right? You can affirm these things by using a body part as measurement. That's something you've all probably done before too, where you take the head, many of you probably learned the whole 7.5 heads or 8 heads tall thing. And that's great. That's a great place to start. But you got to know that when you're drawing each pose, all of that changes, because at the end of the day, this guy, you can take his head as a measurement, but he is not 7.5 heads tall anymore. He is 4 heads tall. Right? Because he's not standing up. Okay. So you don't use the head and always you're not going to try to like turn the head and then go down his hips and then his sides and then his calves. No, you're not going to do all that. What you're going to do is say, in this pose, I can take the head and compare it, and the full thing is 4 heads tall. And then it's probably about the same 4 heads wide, right? Don't get caught up on the whole 7.5 heads tall, 2.5 heads wide for everything, right? That time that you did that practice, if you've ever done it, that was just a starting point. Kind of forget all that. And what here, let me show you more of this. Hopefully, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the 7.5 heads tall thing, don't worry, you're not missing out because it all changes here. Here you can see, once again, we can look at this figure and say, okay, here's the head. This person is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads tall because they're sitting in a chair, right? So they're a little taller, but they're not fully standing up to the 7.5 or 8 heads tall. Okay. That changes with every drawing, and you'll see in a minute, it doesn't even have to always be the head, and it can apply to width. And again, the shoulders here, I think it's like 2.5 heads for shoulders that are facing straight at you. But when he's not facing straight at you, he's foreshortened. He's not 2.5 heads wide. He's maybe a little more than 1 head wide here at the shoulders. Okay. And now the thigh is going horizontal. It's not vertical. So it's only 1 head tall, less than a head tall, and several heads long, right? You kind of tracking with me and seeing this, and you use all these ideas. You size things, you check angles, you develop bounding boxes, envelopes, all that kind of stuff, and do it all to block in and kind of get your general shapes, okay? And you can do this. There's other tutorials. Maybe I'll find a quick video on it or something to post, but basically, the best way to do this is hold your arm out as far as you can towards whatever you're using as your picture, and use the end of your pencil and run your thumb down, put the end of your pencil maybe at the top of his head, put your thumb at the bottom of his head, and that's like your head measurement. And then you can use it on the measurement of, like, measure the rest of the drawing. And then when you start your drawing, once you draw your head, you use that as your measurement on whatever paper, because it's going to depend on the size of your drawing. If none of that makes sense, just do your best at figuring it out. And like I said, I hope y'all find another video. I know I'm overwhelming you guys with a lot of info. And let me reiterate here that foreshortening comes to play. Okay. Foreshortening is the idea that it shows an object or a view of an object as closer than it is or having less depth or distance. It's the same idea that, if you're drawing someone with their arm held out to the right, you've got the full length of the arm. But if their arm is pointed at you, you just have this weird, really large hand to draw, and then there's no arm and all that kind of stuff. That's foreshortening. It does make things tricky. Hopefully, again, because you're in drawing 1, you've done, or drawing 2, you did some of this in drawing 1. So yeah, foreshortening is a big part of why we have to be adaptable when it comes to citing and comparing things. Now, one thing I will say too here is this drawing also proves that because her head is sort of cockeyed away from us and leaning back and way back there, it is not the best unit for measurement. Here, we can use the foot for measurement. Okay. Sometimes it's the hand. Sometimes it's the thigh. Whatever. Sometimes it's an object they're holding. Right. You don't have to stick to the heads thing, but I'm just hoping I'm connecting for you the bigger picture of using a small part of something as a unit in creating the siding and proportions. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully this is not too overwhelming, but overwhelming enough. Okay. Now we're getting to where the rubber meets the road. You're going to get to draw soon. Reminders during gestures, just to remember, it is not an intensive study. You're not getting high detail. You're getting the essence, the foundation of the drawing, the foundation being proportions, shape, all that good stuff. Do not outline. Study contours strategically, like think about not just the shapes around the edge of something, but the shapes coming towards you, and think about how you can draw those with a line or whatnot. Okay. Draw what you're seeing, not a basic human shape. Do not generalize. Oops, sorry. That's the same thing with, like, I know you might know that my shoulders are 2.5 heads wide, but if my shoulders point at you, don't draw them this way. It's the same thing if you're looking at a circle, right, like at the top of a stool, if you're drawing that in person, it's a circle, but where you're looking at it from an angle, it's probably an oval. So you need to draw the oval, not the circle. Don't generalize. Draw what you see, not what you know. Don't simplify or generalize. No lollipop heads, gingerbread men, or crime scene outlines. These will be met with fierce resistance from me. You're not doing it right. Also, right here, do not erase. Start very lightly and edit as you go. You're starting from the inside. Also, just remember, don't start from the outline. That's how you end up with the policeman at the end, or the crime scene outline. You need to start on the inside with the spine, the shoulders, and then start with the values on the inside of the thigh, the values on the inside of the abdomen, and build out to the outer edges. None of that makes sense right now, but keep practicing. You'll get it. Continue to practice. Gestures are useful in all drawings. Everything that you do, you will get better at. If you don't like drawing gestures, I don't like drawing gestures. I'm terrible at them, but they make me better at everything. Okay, just the way it works. And even if what you do is so different from this, I promise it will help you you something real fast too, again, because I've already reviewed that value is light and shadow, and implied shape and all that sort of stuff. We'll have more of that later, but I want to make sure and review positive and negative space. You probably don't super need this if you've been in drawing one, but in case, just remember that positive space is what's there. Negative space is what's not there. Okay, sorry, I did a little clicky thing. Positive shape is what is there. It's the figure or object. I outlined it here in blue. That's the positive space. The negative space or shape is what is not there. So that's the shapes that go around a form. Or if it's like a space between legs or between arms, the negative space can be inside of the form, the figure. Okay? Just keep all of that in mind. That is positive and negative space. Do not forget it. It is often as important to keep this in mind as what is there. Negative space. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're having trouble drawing hands, quit drawing the hand and draw the space between the fingers. It's kind of a dumb little trick, but it helps. In any case, okay. So what I want you to do now on your own time, you can probably finish this video, but whenever you're ready, I'm going to need you to get out a newsprint or a sketchbook. Whatever size you have is going to work. I would like you to do the first few of these on if you have everything that's on the supply list, do the first few of these on a sketchbook and then move to your larger 18 by 24 pad. And whatever you do, whichever size you're drawing on, I want you to always aim to fill up the page. Draw it big. That's the best way to be sure you're getting really better. You're going to need a pencil, pen, Sharpies, charcoal, and whatever you want to draw, whatever. Sharpies, pen, pencil are the most important, and then charcoal will be important for mass gesture. Okay, this is about to be multiple exercises in varied time durations. Now I'm going to run through them real fast, but you're going to have to on your own time go by the timing and stuff. I'm not going to sit here and make you sit through the video of all the timing. So first of all, actually, you know what I'm going to do before we start this? I am going to stop the slideshow or stop this sharing, and I am going to switch to sharing the document camera and just do a really quick demo of what this looks like. Let's see the time. Okay, got to move fast. Okay, what I want here, I'm going to do a quick demo of a gesture. Okay. Okay, sorry. Hopefully this is going. Yes. Hopefully you see this. You can see my paper. You can see my drawing. This is the whole reason I recorded in here. I'm going to have to move to the side here, but the main point is the paper. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with pencil, and just real quick to review, if you don't know, remember that HB is right in the middle. And if that's, out of the pencils I have here, that's the lightest one I have. So that's what I'm going to start with. 2B is a little darker than that. 4B gets even darker than that because they're getting softer the higher that number goes. H is hard. So the higher the number by H, the lighter the mark is going to be. So, if you have a 4H, maybe start with that. Okay. Also, I have here with me a pen, which I probably won't use for this demo, but I also have some vine charcoal and some compressed charcoal, which you can see when I use them. Vine charcoal is very fluffy, very soft. If you've never used it, it's great for starting out a large gesture. And then compressed charcoal is much darker and heavier, and it's harder to kind of move around. Vine charcoal is great because you can erase to make light spots. One thing I want to say, it mentioned it in the deal, and I keep forgetting to reiterate it in my classes. Do not erase with a gesture. I'm reiterating it because I did say it, but start light, don't erase. But if you have an eraser, one thing you can do as you get further into the long-term gestures is maybe think about erasing to create marks. Just throughout this whole class, think about you're getting rid of the eraser as this idea that you're going to remove things. You're going to use the eraser to add highlights. You're not going to use the eraser to get rid of mistakes. Okay, you're just not going to make those mistakes. Okay, now that's just some sidebar type things. Now, first, let me go ahead and start with the gesture. As I mentioned, I'm going to use the little slide that I have pulled up that you guys are going to use. Oh, cool. It didn't end the meeting. Yeah, normally the WebEx cuts out at some point, but this time it finally asked me to do it. Okay, anyway, gesture. How to start with a gesture. So I'm looking at something. You'll see it in a second, the basketball player that I'm drawing. First of all, actually, pause. Before we do our gestures, I want you to do something for me to warm up. I know it seems silly, but I really want you to do this. I want you to take your pencil, whatever you're marking with. I move my hand way to the back, and I put the corner of my pencil all the way up in the top corner, or I put my pencil, the tip of my pencil, up in the corner of the paper. And what I do first is I make a long mark all the way down to the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's okay. That's why I'm warming up. Then I go back up to the top. And I go down to the bottom. And I go back to the top. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is to kind of help me loosen up. And I try to make them one long line, very smooth. And then I'm going to do the same thing side to side. Put my pencil in the corner, side to side. Nice, long, smooth mark, kind of to loosen up. Because when you go to gesture, if you're drawing like this, a lot of people do a sketch line like this. You will not be able to be loose and accurate and gestural with a line like that. You need to learn to make confident, even if they are short, make them confident marks, okay? Now, I'm going to go diagonally as well. I'm going to start light. I don't know. Okay, anyway. That's just, I want you to do that as a quick warm-up. Just take a few seconds to do that. If you go off the edge of the paper, guess what? Nothing happens. It's not the end of the world. You need to loosen up. You need to relax, okay? Now, to start your gesture, I'm looking at a pose. I'm sorry you can't see it at the same time as me, but what I'm going to do, look at the pose of this basketball player that you're going to see in a second. I'm going to make a mark all the way from what's about the top of his spine down to his waist, and then I'm going to finish that mark as the right leg, okay? Now, I didn't draw this big enough, but it's my warm-up, so I forgive myself. Now, go ahead from here. Once I've got that nice axis from his shoulders down to his foot, or the top of his spine, going through his torso down to his foot, I'm going to draw my waist. Now I'm going to draw the shoulders, which there's not as much shoulder on the right as the left in the picture I'm looking at because he's a little bit turned towards me. He's foreshortened, but I got that axis. I know his hips are a little tilted, as are his shoulders, so I got that in there. Now I'm going to finish that other leg. His legs are straight, which presents a problem. Make sure you note when we draw legs, they don't meet at this point up here in the waist. No, there's a pelvis between our legs, and so you need to be sure you leave space for that. Same for the arms. There are shoulders between our arms, okay? There's one arm. It's not very far out because he's, again, kind of pointing towards me. This arm is holding the basketball, okay? Honestly, this is kind of all I want you to do for the first two drawings of the basketball players. But then, as you go, I want you to take more time. That's the baseline 20 to 30 second drawings I want you to do. As you go, now I'm going to start looking for values. And again, I'm not just going around the edge of the shape. I'm looking for the shadows, and I'm going to start creating more fullness in this basketball player's shape. Now, he's wearing shorts and things, so I have to kind of account for that. He's got more shadow on this side of his torso than this, but I'm going to draw a little line because he is kind of V-shaped. I drew his waist a little low, which is very common. A lot of people have problems drawing waists low. I'm getting too caught up on the feet. I'm going to draw some more shadow. Sorry, I know this is probably starting to get a little silly sounding, but you're starting to see what I'm doing. I'm adding in shadows and hands. I'm not trying to draw every finger. I'm not trying to draw the actual shoe. I'm just trying to get proportions in place. This is not a very good gesture, but it's getting things in place. For your minute and a half gestures, this is kind of what I want. Oh, and for the head, I am going to go ahead and draw the head. Now, what I usually, you can just draw a circle, but what I usually do is I'll draw the face, which is turned this way here, and I draw the face as one oval, and then I draw the back of his head as another oval. If I do this, that allows me to get the essence of which direction his pose is. You can do this with faces in many directions, right? See that? Now that person's looking that way. If you want them to look up, you do this, right? These kind of little tricks can help you get a fullness or a three-dimensionality to it. Now, you should correspond it to the head you're looking at, but, you know, it helps you not have to try to draw noses and details and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, that is the start of a gesture. That's a good minute and a half gesture. I should have drawn it bigger. His legs are definitely longer than I have here. And that's another thing is I want you, and it says it in the slides, after you finish something, I want you to go back and compare what you have in the in your drawing to the actual photo. So again, is the basketball, yeah, and the basketball is about waist height. I did good with that. This elbow is about the top of his ribs. This elbow is about level with his face. It's getting close to that. This shoulder should have been probably moved in a little bit, or this one moved out because this shoulder is wider. Yeah, this foot is a little closer to the head than this one. Okay, yeah, that's good, right? The basketball's outside. Right, I can compare things vertically, horizontally, whatever, check my proportions. Checking these proportions is as important as anything else. Now, as the actual drawing, like, because that's how you improve, is you look at it, you say, this is what I did right or wrong, I'm going to do it different. Now, real quick, here in a minute, I'm going to ask you to do something called mass gesture. I'll run over that in a minute. Basically, when I get to mass gesture, what I'm talking about is you're going to turn your charcoal sideways to do your gesture. Okay, I'm doing this demo now, so I don't have to switch back and forth between the camera. But I want you to know when I talk about mass gesture, I'm talking about turning the charcoal sideways with a piece of paper this small. You're going to want to probably make it a pretty small piece of charcoal. If you're drawing on a bigger piece of paper, you can use a bigger piece of charcoal, like this big vine piece I have here, right? But the key with a mass gesture is I want you to use the side of your charcoal and draw lines. I'm going to draw this basketball player again. Draw lines that are actually shapes. They're not just they are not just lines anymore, right? It's the side of your charcoal, and it's going to give you this like fullness in your mark, right? And what's cool is, like, I'm like really hardly trying here, and already it's getting some pretty cool proportions, some cool expressiveness, and it has fullness. It is not just an outline. Just so you know, when we get to mass gesture, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, so save that in your head so we can talk about that in a minute. Okay, good times with mass gestures. I love mass gestures, actually. So just, yeah, like I said, recall that when we get to that. Now, in any case, that is another mass gesture kind of pose. I started with the spine, the basic axes, and then I filled in the shapes. And again, sculpted from within, not just drawing lines around the outside. Okay, now let me go ahead, turn my camera this way, and now that mass gesture, it is going to require that you have the charcoal, pretty much, or graphite, something you can turn on its side. It's going to require that. But just remember that. Now, okay, so I've done some quick demos. Let me run you through your activities. I know the order may be weird here, but I just wanted to do the demo before we start. So what I want you to do is start with your warm-up. Looking at these two basketball players, I want you to first just do the stretches that I showed you right there in that quick demo. Remembering these, you're not going to erase all that kind of stuff. You're going to start with the spine, the shoulders, hips, and limbs. That point just a second ago when I said that's all you're going to do with the 20 to 30 second ones, where I had just basically a stick figure. That's what I want you to get here. But then that stick figure needs to be in proportion, needs to have the pose. Note here, this is the guy I kept drawing there, and you can see where I was talking about the basketballs at his waist level, this hand's eye level, right, his pose is sort of static. This one on the right is more intriguing in that, you know, he's leaning towards you, so that torso is only like a quarter of the actual space of the drawing, top to bottom. Keep that in mind. You've got this really nice big negative space between the basketball and the body, the negative space between the legs, between the arm, the more downward arm and the leg, all that kind of stuff. Get those proportions accurate, but again, it's just basically an advanced stick figure with the spine, the legs, the arms, the hips, and the shoulders, right? Get that in place, compare it, 20 to 30 seconds each. Then be sure you're filling the page with these. These could probably just both be half a page, but these, any of the rest of them, I want you to fill the page. Okay, with these, you're going to get to a more fully finished state that my first line drawing you saw there was. Okay, don't erase. Try to draw these over 60 to 90 seconds. I still want you to get the basic, like, overall size. Fill the page up, top to bottom, or like the pose, get it top to bottom, side to side within about 30 seconds. Then start filling in the lights and darks. Start filling in the values. Start by drawing the inside of the figure. Do not just outline. Think of it like you're sculpting it with the end of your utensil, okay? Be sure to check proportions after. I can't reiterate that enough. Checking things like, is the waist in the right position? Are the hands and feet at the right level? Are the negative spaces accurate? It is possibly the most important step, more important than drawing and all that kind of stuff. Again, is his torso really half of his body? I don't know. Are his legs half of his body? I don't know. Right? Check the pose. Okay, now, those are the first 4 drawings. That should really only take you a few minutes there. Then I want you to start thinking about the different kinds of gesture. The first sort of gesture, this is kind of the opposite of math. It's a line gesture. Sometimes I call it a scribble gesture, but I don't really love that because I think scribble makes people think it's out of control. It is not out of control. It's very under control, but it's just a line. And it's an intensely active line that explores the contours and volume in the figure. Volume is just another word for form. So 3D-ness, pose, weight, values create that, the direction, creating lines that follow the shape, if it's curving towards you, curve the line towards you, all that kind of stuff. That is a line gesture. It is an active line. It represents tension in muscles, volume, value. The values, again, if there's like a dark side, there should be a lot of lines. If there's a light side, there should be fewer lines, but there should not just be an outline anywhere. That's not what a line gesture is. It should be very filled in, very full. And now you can have implied lines, right? Implied edges like this one here. The thigh of the guy on the right, it's not really a line there, but you see it because of the end of the marks. Okay, so what I want you to do now, drawing the same basketball players, draw these again as a line gesture, but more fully. Give yourself more like 2 to 3 minutes. So you can take a little longer to get the proportions. Be sure you filled up the page. Then start filling in values. Start with the internal spine, hips, shoulders, limbs, then go to values and slowly build up the finish. Think of it like you're sculpting the figure with the end of your pencil. This is all just with lines still, okay? Just line gesture. Try one with a Sharpie or pen. Do one with pencil like you've been comfortable with. The second one, maybe do half of it with pencil and then jump in with the pen. I promise it's going to be great. If you make yourself draw with pen, you get better with pen really fast. Or Sharpie's even better. It's a great time. Fill the page, whatever you do. Remember to review proportions and the pose when you are done. If I haven't reiterated that enough. Now this one, those two were 2 to 3 minutes. This one, go a full 3 minutes, just line, okay? Jump in with the pen, right? Start with pen and then switch to Sharpie. Whatever you want to do. I think it would be cool if you just do ink for this, so pen or Sharpie. Now, mass gesture. This is what I was talking about a minute ago, and that little kind of extra demo I squeezed in while I had the document camera up. This is used to establish volume in the figure without depending on outline or contour line. It's not about following the shape. You're going to be able to show mass by putting this, like the whole leg in one mark, and right, whatever the shadow side of the leg is, maybe press a little harder on that side. Boom, now you've got this nice big full shadow, right? You're using the broad side of the charcoal or other utensil, basically graphite or charcoal. Conte works, pastel if that's all you've got, but mentally it is the same as a line gesture. It's the spine, shoulders, limbs, then the internal values, get information quickly, okay? Different amounts of pressure create different amounts of value. Here you can see they just pressed a little harder in this torso where they're bent over, and there's a lot of tension, which also happens to be where the shadow would be, right? That creates this sense of weight, this sense of heaviness, okay? That is mass gesture. Mass gesture has varying levels of activity. You can get really active. The bigger your paper, I will say, as you move to mass gesture, I need you to, by this time, if you have it, move to a bigger paper. Consider positive and negative shape, just like you did with implied or with line gesture. But you can also create implied shapes. Here, this guy on the left, you can't see his back at all. But because of the way the pose is sitting and the shadows on the chest, you know where that back is, right? That's a very much implied shape. Another thing you can do is rather than drawing the shape all the way up to its edge, with mass gesture, what's kind of cool is you can also draw the background, right? So this person, rather than leaving a totally implied back, they sort of implied the back by drawing the background. They drew the negative space as a darker shape on the side that was lit up. No, the back is lit up, so they draw the background, so it's kind of lit up. On the front, they left the background empty, right? Because on the front of the figure, it's the shadow side, so it's darker, so they don't want to put it in the back. You guys see what I'm saying? The background over here is dark, background over here is light, and then opposite of the figure, right? The front side's dark, back side's light, all that kind of stuff. This person in the middle, they just filled up the entire space. And you will notice too, actually, they erased away tool, which is super cool that they did that. They did a lot of erasing to create shape, and they just made sure the background is darker than the overall figure. Now, there are times where, you know, the shin or the buttock or the back might disappear into the background, but as long as it's just a little bit, that's okay. We call that lost and found, and that's okay. I still see the shape of the figure. Now, in any case, I want you to practice this mass drawing. Draw these fully as mass gestures. Give yourself 3 to 4 minutes. Turn the charcoal or graphite on its side. Make sure you're making thick strokes of value, not lines. I'm telling you, you will probably want to use bigger paper for this. If you find yourself turning the charcoal so that you're just making a line with it, or graphite or whatever, you're just making a line, stop doing that, right? That defeats the whole purpose. If you're just using a pencil for these, defeats the whole purpose. And you can't do the thing where you like angle your pencil and make shading. No, just defeats the whole purpose. Okay. Here's another one. So each of those about 3 to 4 minutes. This one 4 minutes, giving you a chance to do something else. Think about shadow under these as well. Think about the negative space. Think about the shadows on the figure as well as under the figures. Note here, this figure is much wider than he is tall. So maybe turn your paper sideways, right? His legs are much, they're very kind of foreshortened and truncated, right? This one's super foreshortened. His knee is pointed at us, meaning he will be drawn not fully like half an hour, right? The legs are different proportions. Compare them within the picture, all that kind of stuff. Okay, now the last one, just real quick. When you get into an extended gesture, like a longer gesture, like 5 to 8 minutes, you can do both line and mass. And that can be pretty cool because you can sort of set up your spine and like the edges that are dark and get the limbs and proportions, everything set in line. And then you can create your values with mass gesture. This can be very, very cool. So check that out. Okay, so it's a mix. Here, I want you to, with these two, pick one. Okay, give yourself 4 to 6 minutes. So it's kind of getting longer. Do both if you want more practice. And I would say start with just pen or pencil, using line, get the skeleton in place. I wouldn't start with Sharpie if you're going to do modulated, like mixed. By the way, modulation just means changed, mixed, whatever, like a line that is thick in part and then thin in another part. That's a modulated line. Now, so yeah, you can start with just pen or pencil to get the skeleton in pose, then grab the charcoal or graphite and start adding value with it on its side for a mass drawing. Don't get in a rush. Don't stress the time limit. It's great if you can work really quickly, but if you go a little over, that's okay. At this point, I really want you to be finishing them first and foremost. The earlier ones, if you weren't finishing in 2 to 3 minutes, you can kind of move on, but try to get finished within the time limit. A lot of the reason I'm telling you to work really fast is because you're learning a lot as you do these, and that whole idea where you review the proportions and all that stuff, you do that really fast. You can finish the drawing and say, okay, I need to improve this proportion, I need to improve this placement, this pose, all kinds of stuff. You can do that. You can learn all that just by doing these 5 to 7 minute drawings. If I were to have you every single time draw for 30 minutes to several hours and then say, hey, your proportion's off, wouldn't that feel like a lot of wasted time, right? You can improve your proportion much faster by getting through the bad ones super fast. That's why I have you do these as a time limit. Also, it's just kind of good to be able to sketch and move quick when you need to. Now, again, I want to reiterate, for your personal work, you don't have to draw fast. I'm just trying to help you improve fast by drawing a lot of drawings. Now, this last one, this is the last one I want you to do. 5 to 7 minutes, draw on the biggest paper you have, hopefully the big paper, mix, mass, and line, pen, pencil, charcoal, fill the page, get the pose, negative shapes. Is this person's waist is way higher than the middle point, even though they're very stretched out, but it's because their leg is on point. Now I'm talking about the middle point between the top of their head and the legs. This hand obviously changes things as well. Actually, the waist might even be, it's pretty much in the middle, but between the top of the head and the foot, this waist is pretty high. Okay, lots of values, good contours on musculature, lots to work with. And again, if you draw big, it gives you more room to work within these things. And also, don't be bogged down. If your background, like you want to make it dark over here so that you can see this arm is light, it's okay if your background is a little bit different than the picture. That's okay. That's artistic license and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, check the values, check the pose, check proportions after, all that stuff, as always. And then here's what your homework is. Once you have finished all those activities, you're going to take pictures of all of them, photograph them, and turn them in to the assignment posted on Canvas. It will be within this week. It's the one that I showed you. It's already there, but I have to publish it. After viewing the slides and this video, going over them, the drawing after activity should take 30 to 45 minutes. So I think this video is probably going to end up about 45 minutes, and then take a break. You don't have to do it right after you watch this video. Then go back, do the drawings in 45 minutes, okay? I will give you another at-home assignment over the weekend to draw more gestures, but you should wait until I have the chance to comment on these practices before you start that. We'll get to more of that in a minute. Basically, these are going to be due on Thursday. So you have 3 days to find this hour and a half that you're going to need, which think about if this were a class in person, there would be 2 times that we would be meeting for an hour and a half. So you got plenty of time. Get this done. Turn it in Thursday, then I will comment, and then you'll have some more to do on your own. You'll find your own pictures and stuff like that over the weekend. Okay. This is my first drawing assignment here to turn in all online. So I just really need to be able to give you some comments before you move on to more stuff. All the due dates are on Canvas. That's Thursday. Dang. I said the date in this. Well, oh well. It is going to be due this week. No, I can't use this video for future semesters. Anyway, okay. Have fun. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck with it. That hopefully wasn't too crazy. Like I said last week, I'm not a great closer. About 50 minutes. Okay, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, this and another one's about 1 class period in person. Okay. Anyway, check these out. Hope you enjoy, and talk to you again soon.